A reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. For Zion's sake I will not be silent. For Jerusalem's sake I will not be quiet until her vindication shines forth like the dawn and her victory like a burning torch. Nations shall behold your vindication, and all the kings your glory. You shall be called by a new name, pronounced by the mouth of the Lord. You shall be a glorious crown in the hand of the Lord, a royal diadem held by your God. No more shall people call you forsaken, or your land desolate, but you shall be called my delight, and your land espoused. For the Lord delights in you, and makes your land his spouse. As a young man marries a virgin, your builder shall marry you, and as a bridegroom rejoices in his bride, so shall your God rejoice in you. The word of the Lord.
Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations. Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations. Sing to the Lord, sing a new song. Sing to the Lord, all you lands. Sing to the Lord, bless his name. Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations. Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations. Tell his salvation day after day. Tell his glory among all the lands. Among all people his wondrous deeds. Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations. Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, there are different kinds of spiritual gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different forms of service, but the same Lord. There are different workings, but the same God who produces all of them in every one. To each individual, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for some benefit. To one is given through the Spirit the expression of wisdom. To another, the expression of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another, faith by the same Spirit. To another, gifts of healing by the one Spirit. To another, mighty deeds. To another, prophecy. To another, discernment of spirits. To another, varieties of tongues. To another, interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit produces all of these, distributing them individually to each person as he wishes. The word of the Lord.
us the glory of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Sing hallelujah, sing hallelujah, sing hallelujah to the Lord. Sing hallelujah, sing hallelujah, sing hallelujah to the Lord. Sing his praise, sing his praise, sing hallelujah to the Lord.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Glory to you, Lord. Lord, be in my mind, on my lips, and in my heart. There was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran short, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, how does this concern of you affect me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servers, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washings, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told them, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Draw some out now and take it to the head waiter." So they took it. And when the head waiter tasted the water that had become wine, without knowing where it came from, although the servers who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then, when people have drunk freely, an inferior one. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this as the beginning of his signs at Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory. And his disciples began to believe in him. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I love this gospel. It reassures me that there will be plenty of wine in heaven. A priest was stationed in the very north remote area of Canada. It was so remote that he had to use his own plane to fly himself to the different outlying missions. He was there 7 years before the bishop ever visited, but the bishop finally came to administer confirmation in all those little villages. So they boarded the priest's plane and went to each village, and at the end of the day returned to the home parish. The bishop was so energized by the faith and the enthusiasm of the people that he could hardly contain himself and decided to visit, surprising the priest afterwards. He said, "Father, it's amazing. Most priests would not be crazy enough to accept this responsibility. And if they did, they would go crazy all the way up here. Yet you're thriving. The people are thriving. The people love you. I just don't know how you can do it. So as they're walking to the rectory, the priest said, well, Bishop, I love them too. But I could never do it without my regular 5:30 martini every night and my rosary. The bishop smiled and said, Father, how about if I join you? It's just about 5:30. Let's have a martini together. The priest said, fine. They went into the rectory, and as they were taking off their coats, the priest raised his voice just slightly and said, Rosary, dear, would you make 3 martinis tonight? The bishop stayed. Most of our lives are actually lived between our ears. And we're told that amongst the millennials, 80% state that their goal in life is to get rich. 50% state that their goal in life is to get famous. I recently watched a TED Talk from a professor at Harvard University. And what he said was that Harvard University began a sociological study on what would make for a happy life 75 years ago and kept the study going. It's the only one he knows of, because usually the sociologists retire or transfer or die. But this one has been carried on 75 years. They've been following 724 men. Some were Harvard students, but some also came from the poorest inner city neighborhood in Boston. The survey was intentional. Rather than dealing with people's memories of the past, they ongoingly questioned the participants, went to visit them, visited them and saw how they were living actually. They had physical exams every year that were recorded. So after 75 years of following these 724 men, and 60, by the way, are still alive in their 90s, they discovered what makes for a happy, healthy life, physically and mentally. And I don't think we'll be surprised at all. Because what makes for a happy and healthy life is happy, healthy relationships with people who we can depend on when we need them. It's not just marriage, but marriage is the best of all of those relationships, even if the couple bickers every day. And this is true regardless of the economic class, the occupation, where they live, or how they live, or their lifestyles. Happy, healthy, physically and mentally, relationships are the key. And they go on to say that as they have followed these individuals through these years and included their wives in the studies, they have discovered that loneliness kills, and that social connections, community, family, and the closest to us are worth all the effort. Because lives can be very challenging. Relationships can be very difficult. But where we put our efforts into relationships, we live good, healthy, happy, long lives, maintaining our physical and mental capabilities. When we hear tonight's gospel, or to this morning's gospel, when we hear the gospel this weekend, it's not about changing water into wine. It's about living life abundantly. Jesus came so that we would live life abundantly. He preached, love God, love your neighbor. He preached, love one another as I love you. He preached the Beatitudes, assuring us that life would be filled with challenges and difficulties, and relationships would be messy. But assuring us that whatever the condition, loving one another will conquer everything. We who live in Christian community form those relationships that we can depend upon. We form good, solid friendships. We are inspired by Christ's teaching to live our lives abundantly. And that's good news.